Sorry about that, it's a fire alarm here. Sorry, my name's David Rivet. I'm one of the founders of Nalytics Technology. I'd just like to welcome you to our webinar on taking the strain out of responding to data subject access requests. Today I've got my colleague Margaret Warrington, who's our product manager.
Hello there.
Just thought I'd say hello on the video, and we'll turn that off and we'll take you through a few slides and the demonstration. Just before we start, just some information about the webinar. We are going to be recording this, and the link will be sent out to all attendees or anyone that didn't manage to make it after the webinar is finished. If you've got any questions, then you will see at the bottom of your screen, there should be a toolbar, and there's a Q&A button, which if you click the window that I'm showing on the screen here, should appear, and you can type in a question. We'll either respond to the questions offline as part of the webinar, or I'll catch up with them at the end if we have time to respond directly to them. In terms of the agenda, we should be running this for just a little bit over half an hour. What I plan to take you through is who Nalander is and what we do. Make sure that everyone is talking about the same thing with regards to what a subject access request is. Talk about the challenges responding to a subject access request, and then we'll introduce you to our Nalytics SARs solution, and Mags will take you through a demonstration of the solution. So who we are is a company called Nalytics Technology. We've been around now for 6 years, and we've been part of the OLM Group, who are a UK software business, been around for 30 years, delivering IT solutions to the public and private sector. We've developed a platform, search and discovery platform called Nalytics, and we create solutions and business applications using that platform. We've got offices based in the UK, in Glasgow, London, and Amsterdam. So just to give you a little bit more background around the Nalytics platform, we're all information workers drowning in data. Most of you have responded to this webinar because you're dealing with large volumes of textual, unstructured documents and data, and having to crawl through that. So we find ourselves in this world of big data. In many organizations, we're full of lots of documents and historical data in our emails, in our systems. And often discussing with customers that we find that we all talk about spending at least 20% of our time just looking for what we need before we can actually get on and do the day job. So it's a massive challenge for people dealing with large volumes of data, and SARs is just one example of that. So because of this, we created our platform called Nalytics. It's a search and discovery platform for dealing with unstructured textual data. We index all the textual content and the inherent structure of all your textual content. So this is emails, attachments to emails, documents, entries in databases. It could be web pages, it could be network drives, it could be any form of textual data. And we index all of this and allow you to search and find or dive into that data and discover what it is you're looking for and what it is you need. On top of this index, this incredibly powerful index, we have the ability to enhance that index data using AI techniques to support specific business applications, such as SARs, and we'll show you an example of that later. Nalytics SARs is an example of a specific business application that we've created using the platform. Just to give you an example of Nalytics and the platform and how it works, here's a screenshot of performing a search within Nalytics. So we have a data set in this case. It's a company called the Acme Limited data set. It's full of emails, Word documents, PDFs, attachments to those emails. And we know in amongst all of that data that we've got an individual whose name is Collins, and he's involved, or he was involved in a dispute. So if I was looking across all of that, those documents and data, trying to find where colons and dispute were mentioned, they're likely to be mentioned in sentences. So in this example, we've searched for colons and dispute at the sentence level, which is the default that we perform when we do our searches. And we get immediately 3 results that are all within their context, all relevant and all talking about this individual colons and the dispute. We can then select one of those results and then view the wider context or the rest of the document, in this case an email, that sentence came from. So very quickly you can get to the data that you need to get to. So let me move on to the subject of today's webinar. We're talking about subject access requests, which since 2018, when the legislation came into force under the GDPR legislation, there's been a growing movement of SARs being performed on organisations. Basically, people's rights to access their data. There's been much more, or there's been more rights in terms of how they can access their data and what rights they have to be able to request and see that data. You know, from our experience, we're seeing individuals, just because of recent data breaches that are widely publicised, people are worried about what data organisations hold on them, where it's held, is it correct, you know, whether or not they want to have that data removed. So, you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of examples where SARs happen just because of that. We've got plenty of cases we've been working with where there's been disgruntled ex-employees to organisations who request SARs as much as a disruption to that organisation as it is to get that information. And we see organisations getting, you know, some getting a few, 1 or 2 a year, but some as many as 100 per month. In terms of the legislation, and in the UK, the ICO, you have a 1 month to comply, and there's no charging available. So this is all on the organisation and the strain on the organisation to be able to respond to these when you have hundreds or many a month. Finally, the data that gets returned to the individual making the request shouldn't really contain sensitive information. So the data needs to be reviewed, and redaction or disclosure needs to be made on certain elements of data that may or may not be responded to. So again, it just adds to the overall burden of performing a subject access request. So maybe just summarising some of those challenges. How do you, once you've retrieved all the emails and all the historical documents that you need to find for the individual, how do you find within that all relevant occurrences of that individual, the different occurrences of that individual's name, maybe related information, nicknames relating to that individual, perhaps person identifiers for that individual. It's a task of sifting through all the documents and data that you've got to find what's relevant. Once you've found the selected or the filtered set of results and documents, you then need to review each one of them to see what can be returned, what's relevant in terms of the subject access request, and what can be returned, and what may need to be redacted. So how do you deal with that? Often people are performing redactions. The redaction technologies work on document by document, so you're repeating the redaction process multiple times, which when you're dealing with hundreds, maybe thousands of documents, it can lead to mistakes being made. Once you've reviewed and redacted all the information, you then need to output and prepare that to be returned to the requester. Not an insignificant task of coordinating printing out of documents or even if it's manual redaction involved. All of this takes time, and there is a time ticking in terms of the 1 month response. But in terms of how long it takes for the individual or the organisation to be able to respond to this, it's taking up lots of individuals' time. Typically in organisations, it involves IT departments collecting information for individuals, and then it involves individuals having to crawl through the data just to perform these subject access requests. So our Nalytics SARs solution, we've packaged the components of our underlying search platform into a focused SARs module. We've created an easy wizard-driven interface that goes through the straightforward process, as we've worked with a number of clients on, taking them through step by step what they need to do, gathering the information, sifting through the information by entering all the relevant combinations of data that people need to look for, and helping them identify and automatically redact information as you go through it. The solution is available as a free to try solution, a pay-as-you-go solution when you might need it, or as a platform that can be delivered as to your organisation as an enterprise solution. So we help improve compliance in terms of being able to meet the timeline. We help find you all the relevant records and data. We have a more robust redaction capability where when we redact things, it redacts across all of the documents rather than just one at a time. And we can automatically identify things to be redacted. So let me move you on to see a couple of screens of the solution, and then we'll put you into the demo. This is just a screenshot of the very first thing you'll see when you enter the tool. You'll notice here that we've got these yellow post-it type guides to help the individual walk through, so you can have a guided process taking you through as you go step by step. Here's a second screen that you'll enter all the relevant information that you're interested in finding. So this is a screen that will help you sift, and Mags will take you through this in more detail now. So let me just pass over to Mags for the demo.
Okay, so here we are at the login screen for Nalytics, and I'm just going to log right in, and you're presented with the toolkit that offers the icons that enable you to access the SARs process, nice and simply. So I'm just going to process a SAR, and the first thing it's asking me for is a name for the SAR that I'm processing, and I'm going to be running a SAR for this gentleman here, James Collins. So I'll just type in an identifier for him. Then it wants to know what data set I want to use, and as David referred to earlier on, the first task really is collating the data, getting the information that you actually want to index within Nalytics and run your SARs against. Now, I could create a data set straight off just by following the process, and it will take me through to into the file manager, and I can then select the files or the folders that I want to pull the data from. But I actually already have a data set created where our fictitious company, Acme Co Limited, we've got a set of data from Acme Co. And here we can see the next step in the process is to define the things that we're looking for. And just to show you something, again, the slides showed you earlier, we can turn on this, what we call the Nalytics coach, and it then gives you coach marks that will take you through the process, screen by screen, explaining what you complete if you're not sure about how to do this. Or you can, maybe the first time you run a SAR, you'll use coach marks, and thereafter you won't. I'll just turn them off for now though. So as I said, in this screen, what do I want to, I'm entering what I want to search for. So the subject of my SAR is this chap, James Collins. So of course I'm going to look for James Collins in the data, but the data may contain other identifiers for James Collins. He might be referred to sometimes as Jim Collins, or Mr. J. Collins. And I could go on if there's other identifiers for this person. There might be an employee number, an email address, nicknames, abbreviations, whatever. So you can put in whatever alternatives you believe exist for this person. And really that is all the search criteria that you would have to put in many instances to progress you through the SARs process. Because you're looking for James Collins and the alternative identifiers for James Collins, and it would find these for you. But just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll show you we can actually put in more information if required. This scenario that I'm using to demonstrate is a situation where James Collins used to be an employee for Acmeco, and he was had a bit of a set to with another employee. There was a dispute, a dismissal, and basically that is why he has made this subject access request, because he's very unhappy with the way he was treated. So he has approached us and said, I want you to tell me the information that you have about me in relation to this dispute with this other person who's called Grant Smith. So I could, to focus my results more, I could actually put in further search criteria. So I'm going to put in, as a secondary party, this chap called Grant Smith. And again, if I have alternatives for that I think might exist for Grant Smith, I can put those in the alternatives. And then I'm moving further down, and I can put other search terms in. So this is about a dispute. So I think I'll search for dispute. It might also be referred to as dismissal or disciplinary. And it's an HR issue, so let's say we'll search for HR as well, also known as human resources or personnel. So this isn't necessarily something you would have to do all of the time, but just to show you, it does give you the scope to be quite focused in what you're searching for. So I've typed in the search terms that I'm interested in, and I'll just move across to the next step in the process. And now it's giving the opportunity to exclude emails from or to particular people. And we've seen this with customers already, where the person that's made the request has already sent them many emails, or they have sent that person many emails. So what they can choose to do is exclude those emails by putting in the email addresses here, and that means that there's less for them to review, because after all, if you've sent the information already to the person via an email, or he has sent an email to you, then he already has that information. So you could choose not to include it in the response. I won't do that for now, but literally it's just a case of putting in the email addresses and then moving on to the next step in the process. Now what I'm seeing is a summary of the searches that the system is going to run. You can see it's taken the key terms that I've typed in and then combined them in different permutations of search. And overall, that will search for everything that I have asked Nalytics and the SARs solution to find for me. If I actually just point to any of these, you'll see that I get a pop-up pane which shows me actually the search that's going to be undertaken, because of course it's more than the main terms that I typed in that are going to be looked for. It's going to look for all of the alternatives as well, so that gives you a whole load of different combinations of search terms that it will look for. And if you imagine having to do this manually yourself, having to type that sort of query into whatever you're searching, it could be prone to error, and you could miss information. So Nalytics does all of that for you. So I could choose to run any individual search that's listed here individually if I want, but generally what you would do is say, okay, so let's select them all because I want to find all of these combinations of information, and then I'll just click next. And this last screen before we actually undertake the search is asking me, is there any information that you want to automatically redact? And there are certain categories of information, types of information that we can recognise straight out the box. So for example, email addresses and names. And if I just select those, what will happen is, as well as searching through my data and finding all the relevant documents and emails and PDFs, etc., it will find those types of information and redact them automatically so that I don't have to do that during the review process. It won't redact the things you're searching for, so it won't redact Grant Smith and James Collins, but it will redact any other name that it finds, any other email address that it finds. So that's done. I'm now going to select Run. And what this is doing now is looking through the large data set for the search terms and the alternatives of those search terms that I specified. Then it is finding the categories of information that I said I wanted automatically redacted, and then it redacts them. And it has now opened a separate tab with the results of the search. And if I look at the top here, it's telling me there's 13 sentences in 12 documents containing the search terms that I've looked for, and I can see that that's indicating the 13 sentences. Here's all the documents, and the number at the end tells me how many sentences within those documents contain the terms that I'm looking for. You can see against each file name, there's an icon representing the type of file that it is, and you can actually click that at any point to see a copy of the original document, and I'll do that just in a moment. But we've got the results now, so the next step in the process is the review, and this is where you get involved more manually. So you, if you click on the name of the document, I've clicked on the first one, it opens up this viewer. We call it Nav View. It's a viewer that shows you the textual content of anything that you select on the left-hand side of the pane. And here we're looking at a PDF, and you can see that there's an email address here that has a grey background. That indicates it's redacted, or it's going to be redacted when I issue this document out to the requester, if this is one that I do in fact release to them. And I can choose to make further redactions or unredact things while I'm undertaking the review. And let's say, for talking's sake, that there's a name here, Mrs. Granger, and I want to redact that name. So I've just selected it, and I'll click Redact Selected Text. It now appears in grey. And I would just carry on that process to do the redaction. If you want to see what the document will look like in its redacted form, I can just click on View Original Document, and it opens it up for me, and we can see the areas that are redacted with the black box covering them. So once I've reviewed a document, I would then generally tag it as being reviewed just by using the tag I have here. There are a number of different tags you can use, however, because it might be that you are unsure about something and you want some clarification, so you might choose to tag this as needing clarification, and you can come back to this later. Or you might want to tag it as containing particular types of information, in which case you wouldn't necessarily want to release that to the requester. And there's some other general flags there, or it might even be you want to delete it from your data set. So we have this capability here that you can tag the documents as you go along, because you don't have to undertake this process all in one fell swoop. You can start reviewing and come back to it later on if you so desire, because sometimes you may have a lot of documents to go through. So I'll just mark this one as having been reviewed, and look at the next one, and you can see there's some names there that are redacted. If I'm happy with that, I will just mark that as being reviewed. Now here's one that also contains the name Mrs. Granger, and you can see it's redacted already, and that's because I redacted that term, that name, earlier on in another document. And as David alluded to earlier on, when you redact a term, it's redacted not only in the document you redact it in, but throughout the rest of the data set. And it doesn't have to be a word or a couple of words that you redact. It may be paragraphs or sentences or just larger chunks of text. So like, for talking's sake, if I wanted to redact that, I could just select it and choose to redact it. And so this is how you would carry on running through, reviewing the information that you found, until you are happy that you have reviewed everything and you're at the point where you want to determine what is going to be packaged up so that it can be sent back to the SAR requester. And to do that, it's nice and simple. We've got checkboxes against each of the documents here, so you can select individual documents, or indeed you can select everything, and whatever has the check mark against it, I can then, if I click Zip Selected, that's me then creating a zip file of the redacted content. So if I just put a name for this zip file, it's telling me the numbers of each type of file it's redacting, and I'll click start. And this is now creating a zip file. And what it's actually doing is taking each of my documents in turn, and it's creating an unsearchable, a non-searchable PDF containing the redacted content, a redacted copy of the original. And it's completed the production of the zip file. And if I want to download that, I just click on that, and I'll open up the zip file there, and we can see that we've got the files all in here. They're PDF versions. If I just open one up, you can see what it looks like. Anyway, just open up another one again, and you can see what it looks like. And that's us. We've gone through from selecting or creating the data set, putting in our search terms, specifying any exceptions if we don't want certain emails from certain individuals to be included. We've said which data we want automatically redacted. We've then got our set of results here, and we've gone through and reviewed them, done other additional redaction or unredaction as we saw fit, tagged as appropriate, zipped it up, and produced our zip output that we can then, if the requester is happy to receive an electronic copy of the information, send that directly to them, or if they want a manual copy, then just print out the information and send it out to them. If I just close this tab and go back to the original one, this is our SARs process, and back at the original starting point, I can now go into view results, and actually that will take me directly to the results again, and view zip files will take me directly to the zip files again. And that's us, a nice streamlined step-by-step process to take you from your initial document data set right through to the data that you want to send out to the requester.
Thanks, Max. And just take it back just to maybe recap and round off. Just to maybe summarise on hopefully what we've shown you, you can see that we can significantly reduce the time taken to perform the SAR. We have worked with a number of clients where it can take days just to gather the data, get the IT part of the organisation to pull data together to give to somebody or a team of people to then go through. And in one case, we've seen days of effort being performed just to sift through the data, find what's needed, and perform the redaction and prepare the data for the response. So working with those organisations, we've turned what was days of effort into hours and minutes in terms of being able to process. So we've got plenty of examples where we've significantly reduced the time and effort. We've just demonstrated the easy-to-use wizard-driven process. It is, as I've mentioned, in a freemium mode, as a try, if you like, try before you buy, and then there's a pay-as-you-go option, or we can talk to you as an organisation about adopting the platform and the SARs capability in-house. We've shown you how you can identify and review all the relevant records really quickly. The automatic redaction piece, I remember the conversation we had with one client about, could you help us find all the names within all the data? And we said, well, how do we know what all the names are? So we made use of some of our AI enhancement techniques to be able to identify actually international names. So we've worked with quite a large number of organisations to identify, even if it's getting 80–90% of the names within the documents, it's a significant help to people that it's already redacted these and allows you to then decide whether or not you want to keep them redacted or unredact them. So this whole notion of helping you redact across has been a sort of key feature for people and organisations working with a platform. Yeah, and this redaction across the entire data set, we've been working with a number of organisations where they're painstakingly dealing with document by document, and in some organisations even printing out all the material and sitting people in a room with the special redaction pens, going through the documents, marking them up before they then photocopy them and send them out. So, you know, that whole process, I think there's a significant efficiency to be gained just by using the redaction capability that we have. And then there's just this collating of all the data at the end, so it's ready. We think that's a neat way of being able to distribute that back to the requester organisation. So just before we finish, we have had a few questions which I can maybe just recap on. Max can join in this as well. I'll just leave this slide up for us at the moment, which has our email addresses if you want to contact us afterwards. You will be receiving an email and details of the webinar, which if you want to watch it again, you're more than welcome to. We've had a request about slides. Maybe what I would like to do is we're more than happy to provide a set of the slides, but if you want to email us directly on that, we'll contact you and can share the slides with you. We had a question about the DSAR process, and I think Mags kind of showed at the end. We designed this to address, Mags might want to comment as well, but we designed this to address an individual performing a SAR, and we've evolved the solution in a number of ways, and we already have in our roadmap a series of features which may be more of a dashboard around how you would handle SARs, so identifying which ones are in progress, what time they've got left to take. So those are things that are coming along very shortly. But as Mag showed, you can list which SARs are there, which ones have already been completed, where you've got an output file, so you can kind of see the status.
Yeah, we're currently talking with a few of our customers because it's very important to us as an organisation to build things into our products that actually are needed, rather than things that needed by the market and by our customers, rather than us just guessing as to what is required. So yeah, we're always very interested to talk with people about their views on things that are coming along in our development pipeline, such as a sort of collaborative front end to subject access requests. So if anyone has any interesting insights into that as to how that would be beneficial to them, I would love to hear about it, because I'm very keen to make sure that what we do put into the system is fit for purpose and fit for what everyone is needing it for.
Just another couple of quick questions that were mentioned. In terms of limits, there are no, when you use the freemium platform, because we're uploading within the browser, then there are practical limits of how much data you would upload, but typically there are, you can upload thousands of documents, tens, maybe hundreds of gigabytes of data through that mechanism. It's just how long it takes to get to the servers on our side to be processed. As we move you through and you have an enterprise level solution, then that can be working directly with your organisation and systems that you might want to connect to. Also, there's a question about indexing of emails and attachments to emails, which comes up a lot with clients. So when we do our indexing with the core platform, everything's indexed. So records can be found. So if there's an attachment for Jim Collins, that's there's a document attached to an email attached to another email, then we'll find that, present that within the result, but also present, so you'll see which email it's attached to or what the hierarchy of its, where it belongs. Did you want to pick up anything else, Max?
No, I think that's. There's one last question actually. Looking at it, been asked about the free trial period associated with freemium, and actually the expectation really is you would use freemium to run a SAR through. So our expectation is you would run a single SAR through freemium, and that would tie in with the timescale that you would need for it and have available to you to run a SAR, which is 1 month. So yeah, I think that's us.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. As I said again, you'll receive a follow-up email just with the webinar, copy of the webinar, and if anyone wants slides, then feel free to copy myself or Mags and email us. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.